My name is Delia. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a senior marketing executive. I was on a business trip in Chicago, staying at a hotel 3 states away from my home in Boston. After a grueling day of meetings, I was missing home terribly, so I decided to video call my husband Jake. When he accidentally turned the camera, I froze. There sitting on my pillow was a bright red phone I'd never seen before. My stomach dropped as confusion washed over me. I don't own a red phone. If you're watching from your own hotel room far from home, drop your location in the comments and hit subscribe to join me as I uncover what was really happening in my own bedroom while I was away. I had been married to Jake for 8 wonderful years. We met in college during our senior year when we were paired for a group project in our marketing class. He was studying computer science but needed the marketing credits to graduate. I was immediately drawn to his intelligence and genuine kindness. After graduation, we dated for 2 years before he proposed during a surprise weekend trip to Cape Cod. It was perfect, just like our relationship had always seemed to be. We settled in Boston, where I landed a position at a prestigious marketing firm. Jake found success as a software engineer, and the best part was that he could work remotely from our home. We had purchased a beautiful brownstone in a quiet neighborhood with enough space for the family we hoped to start soon. We had been trying for a baby for the past year, and though we hadn't been successful yet, we remained hopeful. Our life together felt like a dream. Jake was supportive of my career, never complaining when I had to travel for work, which happened once or twice a month. He would always drop me off at the airport, give me a long kiss goodbye, and tell me how proud he was of me. In return, I made sure to support his career ambitions, celebrating his promotions, and encouraging him to pursue projects he was passionate about. Our home was our sanctuary. The living room walls were decorated with photos from our travels together. The kitchen was where we would cook together on Sunday evenings, and our bedroom was our private retreat. Jake had surprised me with a king-sized bed for our 5th anniversary, claiming he needed more space because I was a blanket thief. I would always laugh and deny it, even though we both knew it was true. Jake's family lived about an hour away, and we would visit them at least twice a month. His parents, Thomas and Nancy, had welcomed me with open arms from the beginning. His younger sister Amanda and I had become close friends over the years. She would often come stay with us for the weekend, and the 3 of us would stay up late playing board games and drinking wine. They were the family I had always wanted, warm and loving, unlike my own parents who had divorced when I was young and now lived on opposite coasts. The Chicago trip was a big opportunity for me. Our firm had landed a major client, a nationwide retail chain, looking to rebrand, and I was chosen to lead the project. It would mean 3 weeks away from home, the longest we had ever been apart, but Jake was nothing but supportive. "This could be huge for your career, Del," he had said, using the nickname only he called me. "You've been working towards something like this for years. I'll hold down the fort here." We had made plans to video call each other every evening. It was our way of staying connected despite the distance. Jake promised to keep me updated on everything happening at home, and I promised to share all the details about my meetings and the progress of the project. I had always been proud of our relationship. We communicated openly, respected each other's independence, and most importantly, trusted each other completely. In a world where so many marriages seemed to fall apart, ours felt unbreakable. Our friends often joked that we were the perfect couple, and while I knew no relationship was truly perfect, I felt incredibly lucky. The first 2 days of my trip went smoothly. The meetings were productive, and the client seemed pleased with our initial concepts. Each night, Jake and I would video call as planned. He would show me what he had made for dinner, I would give him a virtual tour of my hotel room, and we would talk about our days. It felt like our normal routine, just with a screen between us. By the 3rd day, exhaustion had started to set in. Back-to-back meetings, working lunches, and late-night preparation for the next day had left me drained. I missed the comfort of our home, the familiarity of our bed, and most of all, I missed Jake. Instead of waiting until our usual call time at 8 in the evening, I decided to call him around 6, hoping to catch him before he started dinner. I settled onto the stiff hotel bed, propped up the pillows behind me, and clicked on Jake's contact. As the call connected, I fixed my hair quickly and put on a smile, eager to see his face. I had no idea that this simple, spontaneous decision to call my husband would change everything I thought I knew about our marriage. When Jake's face appeared on the screen, I immediately noticed something was off. His eyes widened slightly, and there was a brief moment where he looked almost panicked before his expression settled into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hey, Del, I wasn't expecting to hear from you so early," he said, his voice pitched slightly higher than normal. His face looked flushed, as if he had been exercising or was embarrassed about something. "I finished my meetings early, and I'm exhausted," I explained, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling in my stomach. "I thought I'd catch you before dinner. What are you up to?" Jake ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I had noticed years ago. "Oh, just the usual. Working cleaning up a bit. I was actually about to jump in the shower." As he spoke, his eyes kept darting away from the screen, looking at something I couldn't see. In our 8 years together, I had become attuned to Jake's behaviors, and something about this interaction felt wrong. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "You seem distracted." "Everything's fine," he replied too quickly. "Just busy with work. This new project has me stressed, that's all." I was about to ask more questions when Jake shifted in his seat. "Listen, I should probably get in the shower. Can I call you back in about 30 minutes? "Sure, of course," I said, trying not to sound disappointed. "Before you go, how's the house? Did you water my plants?" "Yeah, everything's good here. Your plants are alive and well," he said with a forced chuckle. As he moved to end the call, he tilted his phone down, presumably to place it on a surface. That's when I saw it. There, sitting on my side of the bed on my pillow, was a bright red smartphone. The vibrant color stood out starkly against our white bedding. My breath caught in my throat. I owned exactly 2 phones, my personal iPhone with a simple black case and my work phone with a navy blue case. Neither was red. I had both devices with me in Chicago. "Jake," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "Whose phone is that on my pillow?" There was a moment of silence, and the camera suddenly jerked up, showing Jake's face again. The color had drained from his cheeks. "What phone?" he asked, but his eyes betrayed him, darting quickly to the side. "The red one, on my pillow. I can see it." Jake's expression shifted through several emotions so quickly I could barely track them. Surprise, panic, calculation, and finally an attempt at nonchalance. "Oh, that," he said with a dismissive wave. "That's a new work phone. The company upgraded us all last week. They only had red ones available, apparently." It was a plausible explanation, but something about the way he said it made my stomach twist into knots. Jake had been with his company for 5 years, and they had never provided phones before. Everyone used their personal devices with a company app for work communications. "Since when does your company provide phones?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's a new policy," he replied quickly. "Security concerns or something. Listen, I really need to shower. Can we talk about this later?" Before I could respond, he ended the call. I sat there staring at my screen, my mind racing. Was I overreacting? Was there an innocent explanation for the red phone and Jake's strange behavior? I tried to rationalize it all away, but a cold feeling of dread had settled in my chest. I called my best friend Sophia, needing someone to talk to. When she answered, I immediately launched into the story describing the red phone and Jake's odd behavior. "Slow down, Delia," Sophia said after I finished. "Let's think this through. Could it really be a work phone?" "Maybe," I admitted. "But you should have seen how he acted. He was nervous, Sophia, and he never mentioned a new phone during our previous calls." "That does sound suspicious," she agreed. But don't jump to conclusions yet. There might be an explanation. Like what? I asked, desperate for an alternative to the horrible possibility forming in my mind. Maybe it's a surprise for you, a gift he was planning to give you when you get back. I wanted to believe that, but the phone had been on my pillow, not wrapped or hidden away. And it wouldn't explain Jake's reaction. I don't know, Sophia. Something feels wrong. Trust your gut, she said finally. But also, gather more information before you confront him. Maybe call again later tonight and see how he acts. Or check your bank statements to see if there's a record of him buying a new phone. After hanging up with Sophia, I paced around my hotel room trying to calm myself. I was a rational person. I prided myself on not jumping to conclusions, but no matter how I tried to explain it away, one thought kept returning. What if Jake was cheating on me? The idea felt like a physical blow. Jake, who had held my hair back when I had food poisoning on our honeymoon. Jake, who wrote me love notes and hid them in my suitcase before every business trip. Jake, who had promised to love me forever. Could he really be betraying me? I decided to follow Sophia's advice and gather more information before making any accusations. But as I tried to focus on reviewing my presentation for the next day, all I could see was that bright red phone sitting on my pillow. A stranger's phone in my home in my bed. The image burned in my mind, a vivid symbol of an intrusion I hadn't even known was occurring. The next morning, I went through the motions of preparing for my meetings, but my mind was elsewhere. I had barely slept, tossing and turning as scenarios played out in my head. Who did the red phone belong to? Why was it on my pillow? Was Jake telling the truth about it being a work phone? During a break between meetings, I found a quiet corner in the hotel lobby and called Jake. It was just after noon in Boston, and I knew he would be on his lunch break. Hey, Del, he answered, sounding more composed than the day before. How are the meetings going? Fine, I said, not wanting to get sidetracked. I wanted to ask you more about that new work phone. There was a slight pause before he responded. What about it? It just seems strange that you didn't mention it before. Can you tell me more about why your company suddenly decided to provide phones? Jake cleared his throat. It's not a big deal. Just some new security protocol. They want us using separate devices for company business. I forgot to mention it because it's not that interesting. His explanations sounded rehearsed, and I noticed he was being vague about the details. What model is it? Maybe I should ask my company to do the same thing, I pressed. I'm not sure, actually. Some Android phone. Listen, I'm in the middle of something. Can we talk about this later? Once again, he ended the call before I could respond. My suspicions were growing stronger. Jake was being evasive, and that wasn't like him at all. Or at least it wasn't like the Jake I thought I knew. I opened my banking app and logged into our joint account. Jake and I had maintained separate accounts for personal spending, but we shared one for household expenses and savings. I scrolled through the recent transactions looking for anything unusual. At first, nothing stood out. Then I noticed a charge from 2 weeks ago at La Maison, an upscale French restaurant in downtown Boston. We hadn't been there together, and at $287, it was definitely not a casual lunch. A week later, there was a charge from Meridian Jewelers for $429. My birthday had passed months ago, and our anniversary wasn't until September. My heart rate accelerated as I continued to find suspicious transactions, a hotel bar charge on a Tuesday night, when I had been home, a significant Uber fare at 2 a.m. on a weekend, when Jake had told me he was having a guys' night and would be staying at his friend Mark's place. With shaking hands, I pulled up our phone bill, which I could access online. There were multiple calls to a number I didn't recognize, often late at night or during the workday. The calls had started about 6 months ago and had become more frequent in recent weeks. Taking a deep breath, I called Jake's office, directly asking to speak with his team lead, Ryan. Ryan and I had met at company parties and had always been friendly. Delia, great to hear from you, Ryan said cheerfully. How's Chicago treating you? It's going well, thanks. I replied, trying to sound casual. Quick question for you, Ryan. Jake mentioned that the company issued new phones last week. Is that something all departments are getting? There was a pause on the line. New phones? No, we haven't issued any new devices recently. Our IT budget is actually frozen until next quarter. Did Jake say we gave him a new phone? My suspicion was confirmed. Jake had lied to me. The red phone wasn't from his company. My mistake, I said quickly. I must have misunderstood. Thanks, Ryan. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence for a few minutes. Then, almost mechanically, I opened social media and began searching. Jake wasn't very active online, but I looked through his friends list trying to find any unfamiliar names. That's when I saw her. Natalie Peterson. Her profile had several photos with Jake tagged from various happy hours and office events over the past few months. Events Jake had mentioned only in passing, if at all. In one photo from just 2 weeks ago, they were sitting unusually close at a bar, his arm casually draped over the back of her chair. Her long auburn hair was falling over her shoulder, nearly touching his hand. They were both laughing, looking at each other rather than the camera. I clicked on her profile and scrolled through it. Natalie worked at Jake's company as a UX designer. She had joined about 8 months ago, according to her employment history. As I looked through her photos, I noticed something that made my blood run cold in a mirror selfie posted last month. I could see a bright red phone case in her hand. The evidence was mounting, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I called Sophia again, my voice breaking, as I shared what I had found. I think he's having an affair, Sophia. All the signs are there. Oh, Delia, she said softly. I'm so sorry. What are you going to do? I had already made my decision. I'm going home. I need to see this for myself. I need to confront him. Are you sure that's a good idea? What about your meetings? I'll tell them there's a family emergency. This is more important right now. Within an hour, I had rearranged my schedule, delegating my presentations to colleagues and promising to join remotely for critical discussions. I booked a flight back to Boston for the next morning, a full day earlier than Jake would be expecting me. I didn't tell him about the change in plans. For the first time in our marriage, I was deliberately keeping something from him, and the irony wasn't lost on me. As I packed my bags that evening, I felt like I was preparing for battle rather than returning home. The home that had once been my safe haven now felt like unknown territory. I was about to discover if the life I thought we had built together was real, or if it had all been a carefully constructed illusion. The flight back to Boston felt interminable. I stared out the window at the clouds below my mind, replaying every moment of the past few months, searching for signs I might have missed. Had Jake been more distant? Had he been working later than usual? Were there unexplained absences I had brushed off? Looking back, there had been subtle changes. Jake had started going to the gym more regularly about 6 months ago, often in the evenings. He had bought new clothes, paid more attention to his appearance. At the time, I had been pleased, even flattered, thinking he was making an effort for me. Now I wondered if it had been for someone else all along. The taxi from the airport to our home felt like the final journey to an unwanted destination. As we pulled up to our brownstone, I felt a strange disconnect, as if I were watching myself in a movie rather than living my own life. I paid the driver, took a deep breath, and used my key to enter what had once been my sanctuary. The house was quiet and empty. Jake would be at work, not expecting me until the following evening. I set my suitcase down in the entryway and stood still, listening to the familiar sounds of our home, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the living room that had been a wedding gift from Jake's parents. I moved through the house like a detective looking for evidence. In the kitchen, there were 2 wine glasses in the sink. Jake rarely drank wine when he was alone, preferring beer. In the living room, a throw pillow was out of place, and there was an unfamiliar scarf draped over the back of the couch, a delicate floral scent lingering on it. My heart pounding, I climbed the stairs to our bedroom. The bed was made, but not in the way I would have done it. The duvet was pulled up haphazardly, the decorative pillows missing. I approached slowly, as if the bed itself might attack me, and pulled back the covers. There on the sheets was a long auburn hair that was definitely not mine. My hand trembled as I picked it up. In the adjoining bathroom, I found more evidence, a subtle floral scent in the shower that wasn't from any of my products. A smudge of lipstick on one of the hand towels, a shade I never wore. I moved to Jake's closet next, searching through his things. Behind a row of dress shirts, I found a small jewelry box I had never seen before. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a heart charm. The card alongside it read, "To an all my love, Jay." My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor of the closet, the evidence of my husband's betrayal clutched in my trembling hands. It was real. It was happening. Jake was having an affair, and he had brought this woman, this Natalie, into our home, into our bed. In a daze, I moved to Jake's desk in the corner of our bedroom. His laptop was there, and I knew his password. We had never kept digital secrets from each other, or so I had thought. I opened his email, his messages, searching for more evidence, needing to know the full extent of his betrayal. It didn't take long to find the conversations with Natalie. They went back 6 months, starting professionally, but quickly becoming personal and then intimate. There were declarations of love, explicit messages that made me physically ill to read, and planned so many plans for their future together. "I'll tell Delia after her Chicago project," Jake had written just days ago. "She'll be riding high from the success, and it will be easier. Then we can stop sneaking around." "I can't wait," Natalie had replied. "I hate sharing you with her. I want you all to myself." I felt as if I had been plunged into ice water. Jake wasn't just having a physical affair. He was planning to leave me. He was waiting for my biggest career success to deliver my greatest personal failure. As I sat there surrounded by the evidence of his betrayal, I heard the front door open. Voices drifted up the stairs, Jake's familiar deep tones intermingled with a woman's lighter laughter. They were here in our home together, and they had no idea I was upstairs. I quickly closed the laptop and moved to the bedroom doorway, listening. They were in the kitchen now, still talking and laughing. I couldn't make out the words, but the intimate, easy tone was unmistakable. This wasn't new. This was an established relationship. "Want some wine?" I heard Jake ask. "I thought you'd never ask," the woman, presumably Natalie, replied with a flirtatious lilt in her voice. I slipped into our walk-in closet, leaving the door cracked just enough to see out. I needed to hear more to understand what I was dealing with before I confronted them. It was cowardly, perhaps, but I felt entitled to this moment of reconnaissance in a war I hadn't known I was fighting. Through the crack in the door, I watched as Jake and Natalie entered the bedroom, wine glasses in hand. Natalie was exactly as she appeared in her photos, tall, slender, with long auburn hair cascading down her back. She was beautiful in an effortless way, dressed in a simple sundress that showcased her figure. "I love that we can just be here now," Natalie said, setting her wine on the nightstand, my nightstand. "No more hotels, no more quick lunches, just us." Jake smiled at her, a soft, intimate smile I had thought was reserved for me. "It won't be much longer. Once Delia gets back from Chicago and the project wraps up, I'll tell her everything." "Are you sure?" Natalie asked, moving closer to him. "You've been saying that for months." I know, but it's complicated. We've been together for 8 years. That's not something you just walk away from overnight." "But you're unhappy," Natalie insisted. "You said so yourself. All those business trips, how she's always putting work first. You deserve someone who puts you first, Jake." I felt a surge of anger and hurt. Jake had never once indicated he was unhappy with my career or my travel. He had always been supportive, proud even. Had it all been a lie? I know, Jake sighed. And that's you. I just need to do this right. Delia doesn't deserve to be hurt unnecessarily. Natalie wrapped her arms around his neck. You're too nice, you know that, but it's one of the things I love about you. As they leaned in to kiss, I couldn't watch anymore. I had seen and heard enough. I pushed the closet door open fully and stepped out. Well, isn't this cozy? I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. Jake and Natalie sprang apart as if they had been electrocuted. The wine glass in Jake's hand fell to the carpet, spilling red liquid that began to seep into the fibers, a spreading stain that seemed fitting for the moment. Delia, Jake gasped, his face draining of color. What are you? I thought you were in Chicago until tomorrow. Clearly, I replied, my gaze shifting between Jake and Natalie, who had backed up against the wall, her eyes wide with shock. I decided to come home early. What a fortuitous decision that turned out to be. Natalie was the first to recover, grabbing her purse from the bed. I should go, she mumbled, not meeting my eyes. No, please stay, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Don't let me interrupt whatever this is. After all, it seems you're quite at home here. In my home. In my bedroom. Jake stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. Delia, I can explain. A harsh laugh escaped me. Explain what exactly? How you've been having an affair behind my back. How you brought her into our home, into our bed. How you've been planning to leave me. Please enlighten me. Natalie was inching toward the door, clearly desperate to escape. I turned to her. Your phone is red, isn't it? I saw it on my pillow during our video call yesterday. She looked startled, then nodded slightly, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. That's how I knew, I told Jake. You were careless, and then you lied to my face claiming it was a work phone. I turned back to Natalie. Did you know he was going to use that excuse? Or did he come up with that all on his own? I'm sorry, Natalie whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I didn't mean for this to happen. Nobody ever does, I replied coldly. The door is that way. She hesitated, glancing at Jake, who nodded slightly. Without another word, she slipped past me and out of the bedroom. Moments later, I heard the front door close. Jake and I stood facing each other in a bedroom that no longer felt like ours. The space between us seemed vast, filled with betrayal and broken promises. How long? I asked, needing to know the full extent of his deception. Jake ran a hand through his hair, his nervous tell. 6 months. 6 months? I repeated, the words bitter on my tongue. Half a year of lies. Were you ever going to tell me? Or was I supposed to find out when you had already packed your bags? I was going to tell you after you got back from Chicago, he said, confirming what I had overheard. I didn't want to ruin your big project. How considerate of you, I spat, making sure my career was on track before destroying my personal life. It wasn't supposed to be like this, Jake said, his voice pleading now. I never planned to fall for Natalie. It just happened. We were working late one night and… Spare me the details, I interrupted. I'm not interested in how your affair began. I want to know why. What did I do wrong, Jake? Was I not attentive enough? Did I travel too much? What was it that made you throw away 8 years of marriage? Jake's expression shifted, a hint of anger creeping in. You were never here, Delia. Always at the office, always on a business trip. I was alone in this house more often than not. I felt as if I had been slapped. You encouraged me to take those opportunities. You said you were proud of me. Was that all a lie? At first, no. I was proud of you. But then it became all about your career. Everything else took a back seat, including our marriage. When was the last time we had a real conversation that wasn't about work or scheduling or household chores? His accusation stung because there was a kernel of truth to it. My job had become increasingly demanding over the past year. But that didn't justify his actions. "If you were unhappy, you should have talked to me," I said, my voice breaking. "That's what partners do. They communicate. They work through problems together. They don't sneak around and lie and betray each other." "I tried talking to you," Jake insisted, "but you were always too busy, too focused on the next big project. Natalie listens to me. She sees me." "And I didn't," I asked incredulously. "After 8 years together, you really believe I didn't see you, didn't value you?" "I don't know anymore," Jake admitted, sinking down onto the edge of the bed. "I know I've handled this all wrong. I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," I said quietly. "You have hurt me more deeply than I ever thought possible." I took a steadying breath. "I want you to leave. Tonight. I need space to think." Jake looked up, surprise evident on his face. "Leave? Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem," I replied, my voice hardening. "Maybe Natalie has room for you, or a hotel. I don't care. I just need you out of this house." "Delia, please." Jake stood, reaching for me. "Can't we talk about this? Maybe we can work through it. I made a terrible mistake." I stepped back, avoiding his touch. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. This was a deliberate series of choices you made day after day for 6 months. I need time to process this without you here trying to justify your actions." Jake's shoulders slumped in defeat. "Okay, I'll pack a bag, but we need to talk eventually. About the house, about our finances, about everything." "Eventually," I agreed. "But not tonight. Tonight, I need you gone." As Jake moved to the closet to gather his things, I walked out of the bedroom, down the stairs, and into the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water with shaking hands and leaned against the counter, trying to process the seismic shift that had just occurred in my life. 8 years of marriage gone in an instant. The future we had planned together, shattered. The trust I had placed in Jake, irreparably broken. I had left for Chicago just days ago as a happily married woman. I was returning as, what? A soon-to-be divorcee, a victim of betrayal. I didn't even know how to categorize myself anymore. Upstairs, I could hear Jake moving around drawers, opening and closing, the sound of a suitcase being zipped. My mind drifted to the red phone that had started this cascade of revelations. If Jake had been more careful, if Natalie had taken her phone with her, how long would the deception have continued? Would I have remained blissfully ignorant while my husband planned his exit strategy? The thought made me nauseous. As painful as the truth was, not knowing would have been worse. At least now I could face reality, however brutal it might be. When Jake came downstairs with his suitcase, I was still in the kitchen, staring blankly at the wall. He paused in the doorway, his expression a mixture of guilt and regret. "I'll be at the Marriott downtown," he said quietly. "Call me when you're ready to talk." I nodded, but didn't trust myself to speak. As the front door closed behind him, the silence in the house became deafening. For the first time since discovering Jake's betrayal, I allowed myself to cry deep, wrenching sobs that felt torn from the depths of my soul. I cried for the marriage I had thought was solid, for the love I had believed in completely, and for the future that would now take a shape I had never imagined. That night, I slept in the guest room, unable to face our bedroom and the memories it held. As I drifted into a fitful sleep, one thought crystallized in my mind. This was not the end of my story. Somehow, I would find a way forward, with or without Jake. The next morning, I woke early, my eyes swollen from crying. For a brief, blissful moment, I forgot what had happened, reaching instinctively for Jake before reality came crashing back.
The events of the previous day washed over me like a cold wave, and I sat up, wrapping my arms around myself, as if I could physically hold the pieces of my life together.
My phone was filled with missed calls and text messages from Jake, each one more desperate than the last. "Delia, please call me. I'm so sorry. We need to talk. I made a terrible mistake. Please give me a chance to explain. I love you. I never meant to hurt you." I set the phone aside without responding. I wasn't ready to hear his explanations or apologies. They felt hollow in the face of 6 months of deception. Instead, I called my office in Chicago, explaining that I was dealing with a family emergency and would need to work remotely for the remainder of the project. My boss was understanding, especially when she heard the raw emotion in my voice. She didn't press for details, simply assured me that the team could handle the in-person meetings and that my input would still be valuable from afar. After showering and dressing, I wandered through the house, seeing it with new eyes. How many times had Natalie been here while I was away? How many dinners had they shared at our dining table? How many nights had they spent in our bed? The thought made my stomach turn, and I realized I couldn't stay here. Not right now. I packed another bag with enough clothes for a week and booked a hotel room downtown. Not the Marriott where Jake was staying, but a smaller boutique hotel where I was unlikely to run into him. I needed neutral territory to think clearly. Before leaving, I made a decision that surprised even me. I called Jake's parents, Thomas and Nancy, and invited them to dinner the following evening. Then I called his sister Amanda, extending the same invitation. I didn't tell them what had happened, only that there was something important I needed to discuss with them. They were confused, but agreed to come. Next, I contacted a divorce attorney. The word divorce felt foreign on my tongue, but I needed to understand my options. The attorney agreed to meet with me that afternoon, and I felt a strange sense of calm as I made the appointment. Taking action, any action, was better than wallowing in pain and betrayal. At the attorney's office, I learned about the process ahead. Massachusetts was a no-fault divorce state, which meant I didn't need to prove Jake's infidelity to end our marriage. The lawyer explained about division of assets, the timeline we might expect, and the various decisions that would need to be made. It was overwhelming, but having concrete information helped me feel more in control. "Do you want to try counseling first?" the attorney asked gently. "Some couples are able to work through infidelity." I considered the question seriously. Did I want to save my marriage? Could I ever trust Jake again? The image of him with Natalie flashed in my mind, the easy intimacy between them, the plans they had made for a future without me. "I don't know," I admitted. "Right now, I just need to understand what my options are." Back at the hotel, I ordered room service and spent the evening making a list of what I knew for certain and what questions still needed answers. By morning, I had a plan. I would hear Jake out not for reconciliation, but for closure. I deserved to understand exactly what had happened to our marriage, and then I would make my decision about whether to try to save it or to walk away. The next day, I returned to our house early to prepare for dinner with Jake's family. I had ordered catering, not trusting myself to cook in my emotional state. As I set the dining room table, my hands trembled slightly. What I was about to do felt extreme, but necessary. Jake's family deserved to know the truth, and I needed allies in what was sure to be a difficult period ahead. At precisely 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and went to answer it, ready to face whatever came next. When I opened the door, Jake's parents, Thomas and Nancy, stood there with concerned expressions. Behind them was Amanda, Jake's younger sister, clutching a bottle of wine. They had no idea what they were walking into. "Delia, dear," Nancy said, embracing me warmly. "We came as soon as we could. Is everything all right?" Your call sounded so serious. Thank you for coming, I replied, stepping back to let them in. Please make yourselves comfortable in the living room. There's something important we need to discuss. As they settled onto the couch, exchanging worried glances, the doorbell rang again. I excused myself to answer it, knowing exactly who it would be. Jake stood on the doorstep looking exhausted. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his clothes were wrinkled as if he had slept in them. When he saw me, relief washed over his face. Delia, thank God. You haven't been answering my calls or texts. I've been so worried. I invited you here for a reason, I said calmly. Your family is here too. Jake's expression shifted from relief to confusion, then to alarm. My family? Why would you? His voice trailed off as understanding dawned. Delia, what are you doing? What needs to be done? I replied, stepping aside to let him enter. They deserve to know the truth, Jake. I'm not going to lie for you. Jake's face paled, but he walked past me into the house. When he entered the living room and saw his parents and sister, he froze. Jake! Nancy exclaimed, rising to hug her son. I didn't know you would be here too. What's going on? You both look terrible. Jake shot me a pleading look, but I had made my decision. I gestured for everyone to sit down and took a deep breath. I asked you all here because something has happened that affects the whole family. I began, my voice steadier than I expected. 3 days ago, I was in Chicago on a business trip. I video called Jake earlier than usual, and when he turned his camera, I saw a red phone on my pillow, a phone that wasn't mine. Jake's parents exchanged confused glances, but Amanda's eyes widened slightly, as if she already suspected where this was heading. I came home early and discovered that Jake has been having an affair for the past 6 months with a woman named Natalie from his office. In fact, I walked in on them together here in our bedroom. The room fell silent. Nancy's hand flew to her mouth in shock. Thomas turned to Jake, his expression hardening. Amanda closed her eyes briefly as if in pain. Is this true? Thomas asked his son, his voice tight with anger. Jake couldn't meet his father's eyes. Yes, he admitted quietly. But it's complicated. Complicated? Thomas repeated incredulously. You cheated on your wife. What's complicated about that? I didn't mean for it to happen, Jake said, looking desperately around the room for support. Delia was always working, always traveling. I was lonely. So, you talked to your wife about it? Nancy said, her voice uncharacteristically harsh. You don't betray her trust by sleeping with another woman. I watched the family dynamics unfold, feeling oddly detached. It was like watching a scene in a movie rather than my own life. I was going to tell her, Jake insisted, after her Chicago project was done. How generous of you, Amanda said sarcastically. She turned to me. I'm so sorry, Delia. I had no idea. But there was something in her expression that made me pause. Did you suspect? I asked. Amanda looked uncomfortable, glancing at her brother before answering. I saw Jake with a woman at a restaurant about a month ago. They looked close. When I asked him about it later, he said she was just a colleague. I wanted to believe him. You knew, Jake asked, betrayal evident in his voice. Why didn't you say something? Because you're my brother, and I wanted to trust you, Amanda replied. I thought maybe I was misinterpreting what I saw. I never imagined you would actually cheat on Delia. Thomas stood up suddenly, towering over his son. I raised you better than this, Jacob. Your mother and I taught you about loyalty, about keeping your promises. What you've done is unforgivable. Dad, please, Jake began, but Thomas cut him off. No, you don't get to make excuses. You made vows to Delia, vows you have broken in the most hurtful way possible. Nancy had been quiet, tears streaming down her face. Now she looked at me with compassion.
What do you need from us, Delia? How can we support you? Her question caught me off guard. I had expected them to be upset, but I hadn't anticipated such immediate and unwavering support. I had been prepared to fight for my place in the family to justify my decision to reveal Jake's betrayal. Instead, they were rallying around me. I don't know yet, I admitted. I'm still trying to process everything. I've spoken with a divorce attorney to understand my options, but I haven't made any final decisions. Jake's head snapped up at the word divorce. You can't be serious, he said. One mistake, and you're ready to throw away 8 years of marriage. One mistake, I repeated incredulously. This wasn't one moment of weakness, Jake. This was a deliberate choice you made every day for 6 months. You brought her into our home, into our bed. You made plans for a future with her. How am I supposed to move past that? People make mistakes, Jake insisted. Marriages survive affairs all the time. We can go to counseling work through this. Maybe some marriages can survive infidelity, I conceded. But I'm not sure ours can. You didn't just betray my trust. You shattered everything I thought I knew about our relationship. You made me question every memory, every moment we shared. Nancy reached over and took my hand. Whatever you decide, we will support you, she said firmly. You are family to us, Delia, regardless of what happens between you and Jake. Thomas nodded in agreement. Jake is our son, and we love him. But what he did was wrong, and we won't pretend otherwise. Jake looked stunned. You're taking her side just like that. This isn't about sides, Amanda interjected. This is about right and wrong, and what you did was wrong, Jake. Delia deserves better. I could see the moment Jake realized he had lost not just my trust, but his family's respect as well. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time, genuine remorse seemed to replace his defensive attitude. You're right, he said quietly. What I did was unforgivable. I destroyed everything good in my life because I was selfish and weak. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I am so sorry, Delia. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I truly regret hurting you. His apology sounded sincere, but it wasn't enough to heal the wound he had inflicted. I turned to his family. I asked you here because I wanted you to hear the truth from me directly, and because I need to know that I'm not alone in this. You are not alone, Nancy assured me, squeezing my hand. Whatever happens next, we are here for you. Thank you, I whispered, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. I had been so afraid of losing not just my husband, but the family I had come to love as my own. I turned to Jake, finding strength in his family's support. I want you to move out permanently. I need time and space to decide what I want without you here trying to influence my decision. Jake nodded slowly. I understand. I'll find an apartment. He hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, Natalie and I are done. I ended things with her yesterday. Not that it matters now. It doesn't, I agreed. The damage is already done. As the evening continued, we shared the catered meal I had ordered, though none of us had much appetite. The conversation shifted to practical matters, what to tell extended family and friends, how to handle upcoming family gatherings, the logistics of separation. By the time Jake's family left with hugs and promises of ongoing support, I felt different. Not healed, not whole, but stronger. Jake lingered behind, gathering more of his belongings. I really am sorry, he said as he prepared to leave. I know I've lost your trust, maybe forever, but I hope someday you can forgive me, even if you can't forget what I did. I looked at the man I had loved for so long, the man I had planned to grow old with, and felt a strange mixture of sadness and resolve. Forgiveness might be possible someday, I told him honestly. But our marriage is over. I deserve someone who won't betray me at the first test of our vows.
As Jake walked out the door, I realized that while he had destroyed our marriage, he hadn't destroyed me. I was still standing, still breathing, still moving forward. And that was something he couldn't take away from me. 6 months passed like a blur of paperwork, attorney meetings, and gradually clearing Jake's things from the house. The divorce proceedings were relatively straightforward thanks in part to a prenuptial agreement we had signed before our wedding. Jake didn't contest anything, agreeing to my terms with a resignation that suggested he knew he had no right to fight. The hardest part wasn't the legal proceedings or even dividing our shared possessions. It was the emotional aftermath, the nights spent questioning what had gone wrong, wondering if I could have prevented it somehow. Therapy became my lifeline during those dark months. My therapist, Dr. Winters, helped me see that Jake's infidelity wasn't a reflection of my worth or a failure on my part. Affairs are about the person who cheats, not the person who is cheated on, she reminded me during our sessions. Jake made his choices. You are not responsible for them. Slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild my sense of self. The Chicago project had been a success, despite the personal turmoil earning me a promotion to creative director. I threw myself into work, initially using it as an escape from my personal pain, but Dr. Winters helped me find a healthier balance. Sophia remained my rock throughout the process. She stayed with me during the worst weekends, brought over ice cream and wine on the hardest days, and listened without judgment when I needed to vent my anger or cry out my sadness. You're going to be okay, she would tell me. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. You're the strongest person I know. I didn't feel strong most days, but I kept putting one foot in front of the other, moving forward even when it hurt. Surprisingly, my relationship with Jake's family didn't end with our marriage. Nancy called regularly to check on me. Amanda and I met for coffee every few weeks. Even Thomas, a man of few words, sent occasional texts to see how I was doing. They had meant it when they said I was still family to them. Jake made a terrible mistake, Nancy told me during one of our conversations. But that doesn't change how we feel about you. You've been our daughter for 8 years, and that doesn't end with a piece of paper. Their continued support meant more than they could know. It validated my pain and helped me feel less alone in my healing journey. As spring turned to summer, I made the decision to sell our house. There were too many memories there, both good and bad. It was time for a fresh start in a space that was solely mine. I found a bright, modern apartment in a different neighborhood with large windows that let in plenty of sunlight and a small balcony where I could grow herbs and flowers. Moving day was bittersweet. As I watched the movers carry the last of my boxes out of the brownstone, I felt a sense of closure, but also grief for the life I had planned to live there. Amanda helped me unpack at the new apartment, bringing a houseplant as a housewarming gift. New beginnings, she said as she placed it on the windowsill. This place suits you, Delia. She was right. The apartment felt like mine in a way the brownstone never had, despite the years I had lived there. I had selected every piece of furniture, every decorative item with only my own taste in mind. It was liberating. I ran into Jake once at a coffee shop near his office. It had been about 4 months since the divorce was finalized. He looked different, thinner perhaps, with a new haircut and glasses I hadn't seen before. Delia, he said, clearly surprised. You look well. Thank you, I replied, feeling an odd sense of detachment. The sight of him no longer triggered the acute pain it once had. How are you? I'm okay, he said. Started therapy myself a few months ago, trying to understand why I did what I did. It's been enlightening. I nodded, genuinely glad that he was seeking help. That's good to hear. I heard about your promotion. Congratulations. You deserve it. Thank you, I said again, unsure what else to add. An awkward silence fell between us, 8 years of shared history, suddenly reduced to small talk between strangers. I'm sorry, Jake said suddenly, his voice dropping. I know I've said it before, but I truly am sorry for what I did to you, to us. You deserved better. I looked at my ex-husband, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. He wasn't a monster, just a flawed human who had made a catastrophic choice that had altered both our lives irrevocably. "I've forgiven you, Jake," I said, surprising myself with the truth of those words. "Not for you, but for me." I couldn't move forward while holding on to that anger and hurt. Relief washed over his face. "Thank you for telling me that. It means a lot." "What happened with Natalie?" I asked, curious despite myself. Jake gave a rueful smile. "It ended a week after you found out. Turns out the fantasy of being together was more appealing than the reality. She wanted the excitement of the forbidden, not the guilt of destroying a marriage." I wasn't surprised. Affairs rarely survived the light of day. "I should go," I said, gesturing to the counter where my order was waiting. "Take care of yourself, Jake." "You too, Delia. You really do look happy." As I walked away, I realized he was right. I was happy not in the uncomplicated way I had been before discovering his betrayal, but in a deeper, more self-aware way. I had survived something I once thought would destroy me. I had rebuilt my life on my own terms, and I had learned that I was stronger than I ever knew. That evening, sitting on my balcony, watching the sunset, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The red phone that had exposed Jake's betrayal had initially seemed like the worst thing that could have happened to me. But in retrospect, it had been a painful gift, forcing me to confront a truth I might otherwise have discovered too late, that I deserved more than a husband who could betray me so thoroughly. I had lost a marriage, but I had found myself in the process, and that I realized was something to be grateful for. I was no longer defined by being Jake's wife or by his betrayal. I was simply Delia, whole and complete on my own, ready to write the next chapter of my life, with wisdom born from pain and hope born from healing. The future stretched before me, uncertain but full of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it might lead. Have you ever discovered someone's betrayal through a small, seemingly insignificant detail? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible after betrayal. Remember, sometimes the most painful discoveries can lead us back to ourselves. Thank you for listening to my story today.